Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Om Shrim Hrim Klim Ganeshwaraya Brahmaswarupaya Jarave Sarvasiddhi Pradeshaya Vigneshaya Namo Namaha Om Shri Mahaganapataye Namaha Om Idham Samarpayami Om Sahanau Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vitvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. This prayer simply means, Om, may the divine protect both the Guru and the Shishya, i.e. the teacher and the student. May the divine forces nourish and protect the speaker and the listener. May we work together with great energy. May our studies and journey be effective. May we never hate or fight with one another. Om, peace, peace, peace. So it's a fitting prayer for what we are about to embark on for the next 15 weeks, right? Including this week. Now, first thing I want to say is there are lots of information out there on the net, right? I mean, the web is littered with so much of information and hundreds of variations of the same information that sometimes it can lead to a complete state of distortion or an utter state of confusion, right? So my advice to you is, when carrying out your own reading or your own research, please use, primary or original sources of information and not simply rely on the web, and just absorb the web-based information that you find there. Everything is Googled these days, and there is no verification of where the source of the information is from. Therefore, it would be foolhardy, right, if you were to believe everything you read on the net. But if you were to read a book of primary source and you were to research using only primary and secondary and verified, reliable sources, then you can justify and you can back up your own reading and research. Hence, that which is taken from someone or something can never provide a justification for your own substantiation. But that which is begotten, right, by own efforts, that you can always justify and substantiate. So my sessions or my satsangs today and for the remaining 14 weeks are based on original research and original messages that I get from time to time, when the antenna is up and the receivers are working in full. So you get certain messages. So I receive and I transmit to you the same thing. And also, they are simplified versions or simplified interpretations of what you would find either in the books or on the web, in relation to Upanishads, in relation to Vedas, and so on and so forth. You see, I simplify them and interpret them in a way that is comprehensible to the common man, because the language that is enshrined in the Upanishads, let alone the Vedas, is not easy to comprehend and is usually very high flown and shrouded in lofty, philosophical thoughts. Therefore, it is hard for someone, if you thought Shakespearean literature was difficult, when you actually read the true works, the original translations, you will see, the difficulties that the common man might face if it doesn't have a solid grounding. But I know for most of you who've been with me since March 2020, I think I would have given you a solid base on which to propel yourself into the next 15 weeks, right? Going back to March 2020, remember, we started with, I can't remember now, I think 11 weeks or 12 weeks of Bhaja Govindam, where we traversed the entire, 30 verses of the Bhaja Govindam. And that was a fantastic start to what was going to be a remarkable journey that has brought us today to where we are. And then, of course, I interspersed that with, 3 weeks on karma, on faith, on devotion, on duty, before I started Bhagavad Gita for 9 weeks. 11 weeks really, 1 week introduction, 1 week conclusion, and 9 weeks. Each week we looked at 2 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. And that too was a fantastic journey. And that brought us up to the end of 2020. And of course, this year we started in February with Ramayana, 9 solid weeks of Ramayana, 1 introduction week, 1 conclusion week. And we looked at the 7 kantas, in the middle. And that was also fantastic. Some of these, not the big ones, not the major ones, but things like karma, faith, devotion, surrender, duty, all of this is available on YouTube. And if you want to get access, you can send an email to us and we'll give you the link, or you can, subscribe to the Region of Love. If you just go to YouTube and put Region of Love, you will also get that. Plus, for those of you who've been following my Thursday sessions, I've also been doing short snippets called Reflections every Thursday at 9 o'clock. Every week since January, we have been releasing 1. So I think we're in episode 35 or 36, and then, we got a few more weeks to do. And then it's 1 whole year, and every week, every Thursday, you've got 1 word that, you can listen to, and you can make some sense of it in your own spiritual journey. So that's the background. And, I'm sure most of you who followed me throughout last year and this year have also signed on for this Upanishads course with the, requisite background. And in the usual way of delivery, right? So this is week 1, introduction to the Upanishads through the Vedas, right? You cannot look at the Upanishads if you don't look at the Vedas first, because that is the end part of that's why it's called Vedanta. Veda Anta. Anta means end. So Upanishads is the end part of the Vedas. So it builds you up. The Vedas gives you little, as you will discover when I take you through it, little bits of information, little bits of practice, little bits of discipline, little bits of evolution brings you to the end where the crest jewel of knowledge, i.e. the Upanishad, awaits you, right? So 15 weeks. Today is the introduction to Upanishads via the Vedas. So the focus is on the Vedas, but I'll also talk about Upanishads in terms of introduction. And then next week, we look at Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which is the oldest Upanishad, followed by the second in line, the Chandogya Upanishad. Then I've just mixed them up, just to give it a sense of, progression, but not in a strict, black letter sense. Then I look at Chandogya Upanishad in week 3, Taittiriya Upanishad in week 4, Aitareya Upanishad in week 5, Kaushitaki in week 6, Kena Upanishad in week 7, Katha Upanishad in week 8, Isha Upanishad in week 9, Ishavasya Upanishad in week 10, week 11, Prashna Upanishad. Then we look at Mundaka Upanishad, then Mandukya Upanishad, and week 14, we will look at the final Upanishad, which is the Shvetashvara Upanishad, Shvetashvara Upanishad. And then week 15 is, the consolidation of the entire 14 weeks, concluding thoughts, and obviously question answer. So obviously every week after the session, there will be a few minutes left for question and answers. So we have someone who will be moderating the questions and will be, audibilizing the question, and then we can take it in that sense. So that's the 15-week delivery plan. Firstly, let me start with what is the meaning of the word Veda. Veda. Ananto vai Vedaha. So it is said, right? That means Ananta is, complete sense of bliss, as opposed to Sukha, which is happiness. Ananta is bliss. So it's like 100 times over. And Ananta itself has got many levels. It's got 6 or 7 levels, right? Then, of course, the lowest level of Ananda is called Indra Ananda. And the highest level of Ananda is called Brahma Ananda. Right? Brahma Ananda, Indra Ananda. So you can go to Devendra Ananda, and then, it goes up that way. And finally, the seventh level is Brahma Ananda. So the Vedas, Rig-veda says, Ananto Vai Vedaha. That means, once you know and delve into the Vedas, it can only give you one result, and that is bliss. Ananto. So the word Veda comes from the root Sanskrit word vid. Vid, as in Vidya. The Sanskrit verb vid means to know, to inquire, to understand, to appreciate, to acquire, to procure, to infiltrate, to investigate, to explore, like that. The word Veda literally means knowledge, because unless you do all the things that I've just said, you're not going to gain a knowledge. So it is knowledge par excellence, right? Vedas are concerned with knowledge par excellence. And I'm not talking about circular or materialistic knowledge, right? I'm talking about how you can evolve and merge with the supreme energy that is referred to as Brahman or Parabrahman, or we have Jivatma and you have Paramatma, isn't it? Yeah. So Paramatma. You see, when man was in its primitive stages, enveloped in complete darkness, the philosophy of the Vedas gave them this glow, unprecedented glow of knowledge, right? The knowledge which transformed Prakriti, the world, into Sanskriti, which is higher values. Prakriti is base value, Sanskriti is higher value. So a man who knows the Vedas whilst he is living in this world has the capacity to lift himself from the basic worldly values to higher values of, evolution, spiritual evolution. And the Veda also means astitva. That means to be in existence, and to be one in existence with the creator, the creation, and everything that is created. Right? And that is astitva. That's what Veda also means. That it means being aware of, you are just one of the many that has been created by the creator, and you are part of the creation. You are not the only creation. So one who has the understanding, the knowledge, and then applying it in their day-to-day lives, where you are in a sense of balance or harmony. It's called samadhana. Then you are actually realizing what the Veda is teaching you, right? It's also suggestive of thought. Thought, of course, goes to knowledge. Knowledge, of course, goes to wisdom. So it is, linked in that way. Thinking is the first stage that awakens the discretion or viveka in man. Man means where? In man's mind. It makes a man become wise and judicious when he exercises discretion. Remember, I said to you, viveka, sense of discrimination. Right? The knowledge which helps to distinguish between the truth, sat, and the untruth, asat, that is called the Veda, because that gives you the knowledge to discriminate and distinguish and discern between right and wrong. Sat, truth, asat, untruth. Hence you have the prayer, asatthoma satkamaya, tamasthoma jodhitkamaya, mrithyurma amrtham gamaya. And that comes from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which I'm going to start next week. Right? So if you're wondering where the source of this prayer is, lead me from untruth to truth. Right? Because you cannot go from truth to truth. Truth is one. It is self-existent. Right? So you can only go from untruth to truth. So until we accept the fact that we are actually living in a condition of untruthness or untruthfulness, we cannot latch into the truth or onto the truth. Namastoma Jyotirgamaya, from darkness to light. Darkness, I mean, not in a physical sense, right? I mean, from darkness to light is easy. You just switch the light on, you've got light. Is that what it means? No. Darkness means ajnana. So from being an ajnana to becoming a jnani, right? One, the knowledge. And you know something, the knowledge is already there. But there is a veil that is shrouding you from looking. Two reasons why, let me tell you. right? One is you look outward. So when you look outward, you're not looking inward. Therefore, you miss all the knowledge that is inside of you. You're not tapping into that resource. You're looking for outside resources, and outside resources are very limited. And until you go inward, you're not going to find that God, right? So that is the reason that shroud, that is called Maya, right? Maya or illusion. Okay, so it also means accomplishment, right? Vedaha, that means one who has accomplished a certain level where knowledge, he can easily close his eyes and open the, open the channels. Your mind has got, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of channels. So if you want to tune in to the superconscious universe, you got to tune and fine tune until it is, one with the other. Then you'll get you can download properly, so to speak, right? Because we are talking about cyberspace now, right? So it's very, very easy. You got to look at is, how do I make my mind so sharp so it knows when to download from the cloud, so to speak, right? So there are 4 Vedas. I'm sure all of you know that already. But for those of you who don't, what does it teach? I'll come to the 4 classifications shortly, right? The Vedas teaches us, amongst other things, how to achieve 2 things: purity of heart and how to get rid of impurity in the mind. When you have these 2 things, they are the entry criteria into the world of jnana, and the world of knowledge. Okay, so this is actually, if you take the Vedas, if the Vedas was a fruit, an orange, and you squeezed it, what comes out is these 2 things: purity of heart and impurity of mind, where you get rid of. When you develop the purity of heart, and you do that by getting rid of the impurities of the mind. So they're both connected, right? Have they got a time when they were discovered? No, they've been declared to be infinite, and hence beyond the comprehension of common man in terms of time and scales, right? If you take the Bible, right, for example, it usually starts with, in the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word was, creation. Was the Word. So, as far as the Vedas are concerned, in the beginning, there was only Veda, right? Vedanta, which slowly became Vedanta. Veda, Vidya, knowledge, became the end of knowledge is what? Like Swami says, the end of education is character. Not a big job, not a big fat salary, not a huge house, not having 3 cars parked in your drive, but character, right? So simply, it means, to get to a stage where you have developed purity of your heart by getting rid of the impurities of the mind. Simple as that. And of course, in order to do that, you need to, what we say, equip yourselves appropriately. Like if you want to go camping, you go and research and you get everything that you need to do, isn't it, before you set off for camping. If you want to go fishing, that requires all the prerequisites before you actually set off. So similarly, if you want to read the Vedas, there is also some discipline and some spiritual requirements that is necessary or needed, right? Because half knowledge is very dangerous, right? Full knowledge can save you, or if not practiced properly, can kill you, right? As was the case with Ravana. And half knowledge is even more dangerous, right? So the man who took all this from, hearing, Shruti, and seeing, Smriti, right? Because in those days, they never had any kind of recording device. They never had all this, cyber-related technology where, you can save information, you can record nothing. So everything was done through the relationship between the conscious mind that latched on to the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind tries to connect with the superconscious mind. And when there is a straight line going through the 3 levels of consciousness, therein the channel is opened and all the information flows through, right? Sometimes you can see some things, Sometimes you can see some things, other times you can only hear, because sound vibration is, universally present, isn't it? It is pervading, it is reverberating around the world. Hence we have the Om, right? AUM, Makara, Ukara, Makara, past, present, future. It's always been there. And some of you know that, the scientists have discovered a humming sound that is pervading around the universe, and they call it the Big Bang Theory, something like that. And recently I read something, but which research was done some time ago, that even the sun makes a sound that is synonymous or, synchronous with Om. So this is the sound of the universe. Therefore, sounds can be heard if your listening is 100% intentful and insightful, right? So what you see, what you hear is what? So Maharishi Veda Vyasa Maharishi took all this and divided all this knowledge, right? So that we can study and practice the teachings of these Vedas. And out of the countless number of hymns and sakhas, Vyasa gathered it, and then he made it into 4 compartments, right? That is the Rig-veda, Yajur-veda, Sama-veda, and Atharvana-veda. Of course, in some resources or some references, you will see that the Atharvana-veda is divided into 2. It's called Krishna Yajur-veda and Shukla Yajur-veda. But you can refer to it as Yajur-veda. That's not a problem at all. So the Rig-veda, what does that involve? Rig-veda involves hymns in praise of various deities. So all the mantras that you hear, they come from Rig-veda. And some of them come from the Yajur-veda. They all concern themselves with mantras that you use for worshipping the different deities. Now, I've also explained to you previously what is the meaning of mantras. Mantras comes from 2 root Sanskrit words, manas and tranas. Manas means your mind, and tranas means that which has the capacity to set you free. So a mantra, when repeated with the right intent, at the right intonation, right meter. Remember, we refer to it as chandaha. Like, every time before you say a mantra, the Dhyana Shloka will always tell you who's the Rishi who was, if you're saying the Atharvana Shirsham, you say, see, Atharvana Rishihe Gayatri Chandaha, like that. So you will give credence to the creator or the seer or the author of that particular shloka or mantra or stotram. And then you'll also say in which chanda it should be recited. So Rig-veda and Yajur-veda, for example, the Rudram, Sri Rudram comes from Rig-veda, right? Most of it comes from Rig-veda and some of it comes from the Yajur-veda. But Yajur-veda is also more concerned with the performance of yajnas, yagas and yajnas, and, dhana karyas, which means the acts of charity, right? Now, each Veda, I told you there's 4 Vedas, right? Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharvana-veda. They are each divided into 4 parts. So every Veda, if you take, has got the first part called Samhita, which talks about mantras and, if you like, benedictions, right? And then the second part is called Aranyakas. This is a text on rituals, on ceremonies, on sacrifices, on symbolic sacrifices, and so on and so forth, right? Then the third part is called the Brahmanas. This is the commentary on the rituals, ceremonies, and sacrifices. So you see, the first 2 is what I would refer to as Karma Kanda, right? Doing something physically. And then the next 2, Brahmanas, which is the commentaries. And then the final one is the Upanishads, the text discussing the philosophy and the attainment of spiritual knowledge. So that is why Upanishads is called as the Vedanta, Veda Anta. That means the end of the Vedas is the Upanishads, that's the knowledge, right? So Samhita and Aranyaka are Karmakandas, Brahmanas and Upanishads are Jnanakandas, that which gives you the knowledge. Then Brahmanas and Aranyakas, that which gives you the practice. You remember, I've said this many times, but I'll repeat it, right? Just like the 4 Purusharthas, you have Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Dharma and Artha must always go together. Dharma is righteousness, Artha is material possessions. So material possessions must be acquired through dharmic means. Only then you can go to the third, Kama and Moksha. Moksha, the only repellent to moksha is kama or desire or lust. Unless that is controlled, you can never touch moksha. So in the same way, if you are constantly only involved in samhitas and aranyakas as far as the Vedas are concerned, then you're not going to hit the Brahmanas, the Upanishads, right? And that's the practical way to look at it. When was the Rig-veda? Well, we can only go by records, and there is no mechanism to actually measure the specific or precise time. But I would put it around 1500 to 1200 BCE, right? That's the Rig-veda. How many verses in the Rig-veda? Almost 30,000 verses has been recorded. And of course, as we move into this, we will see how many have been recorded. Now, the Vedas also is given 9 different classifications, right? So you must be clear in what I'm saying, right? You must get it clearly. So I said the Vedas is divided into 4 parts. That is this the Samhitas, the Aranyakas, the Brahmanas, and the Upanishads, right? So that's clear. But they have got classifications, right? For example, they're divided into 9 different classifications. So if you like, what I'm doing is giving you the organogram of the entire Vedic philosophy. So they call Shruti. Shruti refers to the process of learning the Vedas from a preceptor or a teacher or guru by practicing and chanting it in a certain way. So if you go to the Gurukulas, or in fact, if you have listened to the Prashanti, recordings, you will know that, first the guru repeats it and then the students will repeat it twice. So the Vedas is to be taught in the same way. Hence, we have Shruti as one classification. Then we have Anuswara, right? So for example, you see the word coming up in many mantras. And like I said to you earlier, if you look at the Ganapati Atharva-shirsham, right? There's one part that comes where it says, Anuswara parataraha ardendulasitam tharena ruddham etattava manushvarupa. Like that. Anushwara means the practice of repeating the mantras learned from the preceptor, contemplating on them and preserving them for the purpose of mind, right? Mind, brighten your mind, illumine your mind. Then we have Trayi. Trayi means 3. So the first 3 Vedas, the Rig-veda, the Yajur-veda, and the Atharvana-veda are called the Trayi-veda, right? And they're all seen as something called Apaurusheya. Apaurusheya. Apaurusheya means without human origin. That means, begotten from the divine energy, the divine consciousness, does not have a human creator or a human author, right? Apaurusheya. So Shruti, Anuswara, Trayi. And then we have Amnaya. Amnaya means constant contemplation of the root syllable, right? And like Om, for example, right? And then you qualify the mantra with Om, and sometimes you add Namaha if you are doing a prayer, or if you're doing a Havan or Yajna, then you add Swaha. So that is Amnaya. It refers to what you have to focus on. Then you have Samamnaya. Amnaya, Samamnaya is constant contemplation in the mastery of Amnaya, right? Then you have Chandas, as I said, the meter, right? And then you have Swadhyayam. Swadhyayam is, for example, practicing the knowledge yourself, and then, of course, giving it as a gift, as a heritage to the next in line. And then they will do the same thing, and so on and so forth. Of course, this is largely, or used to be largely, practiced within the Brahmin community, who are meant to be doing this, and then, of course, handing it down. But more and more are sort of merging into the modern world, and they have sort of moved away from their, main work, which is, priesthood, and, they've gone to professional side. So that is actually Swadhyayam. It is an injunction that if you are in this category, then you must learn it, master it, and then hand it over to the next generation, right? That is Swadhyayam. And then the last 2, you have Gama and Agama. right? Gama and agama are names given to, when you inhale is gama, and when you exhale is agama. And this is taken to be, the Vedas are referred to as, classified as gama and agama, because it is the breath process of the Lord. So when we latch on to gama, as we inhale, we think of God, and as we exhale, we think of God, then we are actually trying to synchronize our own breathing with that of the universe, right? Emanations of breath of the Lord that we are trying to merge and synchronize with, right? So what is the purpose of these Vedic mantras? Well, initially they were created so that you could pray for others and others could pray for you in return, right? So nobody used to pray in the early days, right? Nobody used to pray for their own benefit. The Vedic mantras were utilized in yajnas, ritual sacrifices for the promoting of global well-being, societal well-being. This is known as Loka Kalyan, right? Loka Kalyan means everybody is good. If I pray for everybody else and everybody else is praying for me, then together we are well, isn't it? If I pray myself, then it is to the exclusion of everybody else. You see, right? I mean, there were many reasons why certain Vedic mantras were used. Do you know there is a mantra called Varuna mantra? That means is to pray for rain. Vayu mantra, pray for wind. Surya mantra, pray for sun. Chandra mantra, to pray for moonlight. Moon, of course, I've said many times, Manas, moon and Manas, right? Chandra is the guardian deity of the mind, right? So some things in the Vedas give you proficiency in Karma Kanda. Other things from Karma Kanda should lead you to Jnana Kanda, right? From practicing things to actually becoming an intellectual in that. Leaving the practice and then moving on to something else, right? In fact, earlier today, someone asked me, one sister from another center called and asked, can ladies go and do the Ganapati Visarjan? Right? Because there are lots of people who are telling Ganapati is the male god, therefore females are not allowed. I said, okay, can I stop you there? If you're asking what I think, I don't look at God from a human perspective. I don't give them genders. Because for me, Ganapati is the name of an energy. Because you're looking at it from a Satguna perspective. That means Sat means that which has attributes, which has forms. But I am looking at it from a Nitguna perspective, that which does not have any form, that does not have any attributes. Therefore, I see I can do what I want with the energy in a way that I feel connected to the energy. And in that sense, I can tell you, you can do that too. If you have a Ganesh at home and you want to go and put it in the river, in the ocean, in the sea, whatever, you can do that. But don't think of him as a male god and ask yourself, as a female, can I do it? Then, this Karma Kanda will not work because it has not given you any Jnana Kanda sense. Right? So that's what I told her. I said, look, first you got to change your thinking. Right? And this is where the Vedas come in. So that is what the mantras, remember I said mantras is that which when repeated with intent and insight can give you liberation from the mind. Liberation from the mind means what? From the bondage of the cycle of birth and death. Punarjanmaha. Remember when I did Bhajagovindam, I said, Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Janani, Punarapi Jananam, Jathare Shayanam, Ihasamsare, Bahutustare, Kripayapare, Pahi Murari, Bhajagovindam, Bhajagovindam. Release me from the cycle or bondage of birth and death. So you must change your thinking. So coming to the Upanishads means definitely you must engage in a higher thinking. You cannot want to come to the Upanishads and still have one leg in the Karma Kanda sense where I have to pray this way, I have to go around Ganesha 21 times. All that is Karma Kanda. If you do that, yeah, you get some benefits, but you will not go beyond the level of practice to the intellectual level. It's like I give you the analogy of you. If you are a child and I am telling you, look, child, look at the moon, and I'm pointing to the moon, but the child is only looking at my finger. So as long as it keeps looking at my finger, it will miss the moon. But the moment it looks at my finger and then it follows the direction of my finger and then loses my finger but looks at the moon, then this finger is no longer necessary. So all the karma kandas are just a signpost. And the sad thing is, the majority of people, they are latched onto this karma kanda and they forget that that is just a stepping stone for them to get onto the jnana kanda. Jnana, intellect, buddhi. Karma is action. So if you keep sticking to the action, you're not going to get the buddhi that is going to, take you to a higher level of consciousness, right? So that Rig-veda gives you all the mantras. Yajur-veda tells you how to worship the deities in a different way. Like, they give you bija mantras. Like Ganapati, the bij mantra. Bij is seed. Akshara means sound. So the seed sound for Ganapati is gum. Right? So if you want to realize the force of energy that is referred to as Ganapati, sit with the light. Look at the light first and then transport the light into the center in your Ajna chakra. Close your eyes and then repeat Om Gam until you feel movements in your Mooladhara chakra. Tvam Mooladhara stithosi nityam tvam shakti trayatmakaha. That's what it means. You are verily the resident deity of the Mooladhara chakra, and you have the power, the Shakti, the energy to, invigorate all the other chakras. And Mooladhara must start first. You start with the Mooladhara. Okay, so when you talk about Yajur-veda, I told you there are two types, isn't it? The Krishna Yajur-veda and the Shukla Yajur-veda. So the Krishna Yajur-veda is actually based on the Sampradaya. It's called Brahma Sampradaya, Brahmic tradition. And the other one is referred to as Aditya Sampradaya. Of course, Shukla Yajur-veda is North India and Krishna Yajur-veda is South India in terms of cultural division. So remember that. The Vedas, they are the most sacred heritage of mankind. I say mankind, I don't say Hindus, because nowhere, and actually this is an open challenge to everybody, right? If you can find any of the Vedas that refers to any specific religion, let alone Hindu, right? Please let me know, because I cannot find anything. It just says man, 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 man. Right? There is no reference at all, not a single reference. Of course, it belongs to the Hindus. It does not mean it is meant only for the Hindus. And hence, Swami has always placed emphasis. He said, read the Vedas and realize, read the Vedas and realize. Right? It is a vivid picture of intended transformation of man. See, all this is so that you can transform. I told you, the knowledge is already inside of you. That means it is lying latent. But by reading and researching and examining and exploring and going within, you are making that latent knowledge become patent. Once it is patent and you are sharing that knowledge with others, you make it potent. Now, how long you take to do that? That is an individual question, but the knowledge is already within you, latent. Learn it, realize it, make it patent, start sharing it with others, it becomes potent. Only when it becomes potent, you will suddenly receive, because your antenna is swirling from subconscious to superconscious. It is saying, look, I'm ready. Come on, feed me, feed me, feed me. Boom, 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 boom. Information will come. Information will come 100%. Right? Information will come because you're latched on. Your subconscious and the superconscious is there. That's why you say 3 ohms, one for the physical self, one for the mental self, one for the spiritual self, one for the conscious self, one for the subconscious, one for the superconscious, one for past, one for present, one for future, one for Brahma, one for Vishnu, one for Shiva, one for Durga, one for Lakshmi, one for Saraswati. Okay. So I've said it both from Satguna perspective and Nitguna perspective. You take it how you want. 3 gunas. Rajasic, Tamasic, Sattvic. You say the 3 things. So there are so many, internal divisions, which gives you so much of information for transformation. So if you do not use the information for self-transformation, right, you cannot change or transform other people if you yourself are not changed or transformed, right? And you can use the great knowledge that is contained within the Vedas. It is an acquired knowledge, right? It is knowledge that is acquired through sound, shruti, and sight, smriti. I mean, unlike the modern days where, people don't even take notes. Why? Because it is recorded and it is available on some virtual learning environment. Therefore, I don't even have to listen or, be there in person, because I know it's there. So I can, log on at any point in time and listen to it and whatnot. So, see, in the early days, knowledge was you sit in front of me and you listen to what I'm saying and you repeat. See, that's the way the gurus taught the shishyas in the gurukulas and so on, so forth. That's why they're timeless. They're without a beginning, and certainly they don't have an end, right? But you can get to the end by using the Upanishads, which is the end part of all Vedas. Timeless, and they don't have any confines. They don't have any limitations. They're divine, they're eternal, and of course, as I said to you earlier, they are knowledge par excellence. Sri Aurobindo once said, the Vedas contain divine knowledge, right, revealed to the great rishis in their supranational, supranormal consciousness. Supranormal consciousness. The Vedas contain the divine knowledge which was revealed to the great rishis in their supranormal consciousness. So you need to be conscious. That consciousness needs to connect, communicate, and relate to the subconscious, that is the mind. And that then needs to send out signals to the superconscious. When these three are in alignment, this is sometimes referred to as Trikarana Shuddhi. Trikarana Shuddhi. Then it's open. Like on your phone, when you have 5 bars, what sort of reception do you get? As opposed to when you see your phone, there's 1 bar. You go to different parts trying to increase the bars on your phone. It's just like Wi-Fi signals. Why? Because you want to get better reception. That's what I mean. The conscious, subconscious, the superconscious bars are all aligned. The reception is limitless, right? Sublime knowledge, right? Sometimes you call this swatha pramana, right? Sublime knowledge, self-evidence. Swatha pramana means sometimes swayambhu, it's there. It's there, and when you look at it, you find it, you get it. So it's swatha pramana. The truth does not need any proof. But if you lie, you always find that you got to prove it. Prove a lie to tell a lie, and to tell another lie to prove a lie in order to prove a lie. But the truth is one. Ekam Sathya. Right? Truth is only one. Right? Therefore, the Vedas actually touch on all aspects of life. The 4 ashramas, brahmacharya, grahastha, vanapadishta, and sannyasa. Right? And again, we looked at this when we looked at Bhajagovindam, we looked at Bhagavad Gita, we looked at Ramayana, we looked at how man, born as man, can behave by thinking, speaking, and acting in a way that moves him from the levels of Manusha, man, to the levels of Purusha, God. Right? Einstein, everybody knows Einstein, right? Einstein has quoted the Vedas multiple times, numerous amounts of times. And he said, this is the earliest documents of the human mind. Right? I'll come to that. The end part of this is I'm going to talk about how the Vedas / Upanishads relate to modern science. How our ancient knowledge has come to be recognized, repeated, cited, referred to as a reference by modern scientists. Modern scientists of the 20th century, 19th century, right? I think 18th century as well, right? So if you look at the Vedas in the four classifications of Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharvana, there's more than 100,000 verses in all 4 of them. But out of that, currently in practice is very little, but what is salvaged and what has survived the series of constant and consistent and gradual destruction over a period of time is only about 21,000 verses. Well, 20,379 to be precise, right? So if you take this 20,379, which is the remnants or the residues from the 100,000 that we had currently available, the Rig-veda has 10,552. Sama-veda has 180, so 1875, 1,875. right? So Rig-veda has 10,552 into 10 mandalas, right? 10 mandalas, chapters if you like, or sections if you like. Sama-veda 1,875 into 21 mandalas, or 21 chapters, or 21 sections. Yajur-veda has 1975, 1,975 verses in about 40 chapters, divided to 40 chapters. And the Atharvana-veda has 5,977 verses over 20 chapters. I mean, this is the statistics that should reflect the truth. So I said to you, the Vedas is divided into 4 parts, right? Brahmanas, each Veda. So Rig-veda has got Brahmanas, Aranyakas, Samhitas, and Upanishads. Yajur-veda has got the same. Atharvana-veda has got the same. Sama-veda has got the same. So what does Brahmanas mean? Brahmanas deal with every minute detail for the guidance of priests to conduct yajnas. And of course, some prayers most prayers are conducted from Rig-veda, but very few are conducted from Yajur-veda, and even less is taken from Sama-veda. Sama-veda is more prose. So this is the Brahmanas, the first step in the Vedas. They tell you how to pray, what mantras to chant for different types of pujas. And so when all the priests, when they go and study India, just like you go to university, you study for a degree for 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years, depending on the course you're studying for. The priests go between 5 and 7 years. They study all this. The Brahmanas is the major part of what they are studying. Brahmanas. They don't go into Aranyakas and Samhitas and Upanishads, right? Very, very few of them. I would say about 5% actually go beyond that. And then, of course, they become like GAs, or they become, rishis, modern day rishis, right? Because they are no longer involved with the Karma Kanda. They've gone beyond that. They've gone to Jnana Kanda, right? Like Janaka, King Janaka is a good example, who was not at the Karma Kanda stage. He was at the Jnana Kanda stage because he had a guru. And, when I do one of the Upanishads, it's just a conversation between Janaka and his guru, Ashtavakra. Anyway, so that's Brahmanas, right? Minute details of guidance for priests to conduct yajnas, right? So for Ganapati Homam, for example, what do you do for Navagraha Homam, for Graha Shantis, all these things, they've got a specific procedure. Then you have Aranyakas, which is, Aranya is, of course, when I did the Ramayana, I spoke to you about the Aranya Kanda. Aranya means forest. It's the time where Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana went to the forest. So these are books referred to as the great books of the forest. Now, the moment you say forest, there is a certain sense of tranquility that comes to your mind, isn't it? Sitting under a tree, just listening to the birds chirping, the sunlight coming through the branches, shining on you, no disturbance, So a sense of tranquility. They explain, Aranyakas actually explain the meaning of the Vedas. They say, what is God? How can you latch on to God? What is the best form of worship? What are the procedural aspects of devotion? Things like that. That is what Aranyakas do. Then you have the Samhitas. Samhitas are basically a process of collection and arrangement that brings about a certain sense of purport in the Veda in the form of mantras. So, like 3 lines, 4 lines, how many shakas, so on and so forth. So these are verses of praise, like the Shuktas, Durga Shuktam, Shri Shuktam, Meda Shuktam, they all come from here, in praise of celestial divine beings who are given certain names, right? You use them to get to the supreme, right? From the form to the formless. But if you stick to the form, you will never reach the formless. And your understanding, your knowledge, and your entire life will be revolving at the form level, and you don't graduate. It's like you keep repeating the final year of your undergraduate. You never graduate. The moment you graduate, it means you're no longer at the form level. You're going into the formless. So Brahmanas, Aranyakas, Samhitas, the last one is Upanishads. And as I said to you, they're referred to as Vedanta, Vedanta, the end point of the Vedas. That means Upanishads means annihilating the ignorance, right? So we used to have, going back in time, right, more than 1,000 Upanishads, right? 1,180 to be specific. Now less than 200 other. And of that, only 13 are known as the principal Upanishads, which convey the basic teachings in terms of becoming knowledgeable, right? Becoming knowledgeable. So these take you out of the Karma Kanda stage and put you in the beginning stages of the Jnana Kanda. So unless you use that in the right way, you are not going to make much progress, or you'll just be making snail progress as opposed to, what we call a hare progress, hares and rabbit. Much faster you jump. So Upanishads means Upanishad, 3 words, right? Or 3 root words. Upanishad. That means Upa means come near. Ni means sit at near the feet. And Shad means listen. Shad comes from the root Sanskrit word Sha, which means Shravanam, listen. So come near, sit down, and listen to the Guru, the spiritual teacher who is going to be talking to you about, what he has cognized as fundamental truths of the universe. So it points to a time, in the early days of Gurukula. So if you see like Ramayana, if you see Mahabharata, you will find that all the, for example, if you take Mahabharata, the Kauravas and the Pandavas were sent to the Gurukula, where of course Drona Maharishi was their guru. And of course, he sat them down and he was talking to them, right? Upanishad also means the route to acquire Brahmanyanam. Brahmanyanam means Brahmic knowledge, by which all types of ignorance is annihilated. Brahmanyanam. Jnanam, Indra Jnanam, Deva Jnanam, Agni Jnanam, Brahma Jnanam. 5 stages, right? So you have to transcend each stage. Then, of course, that's what Upanishads means. Is there a date which we can attribute to the date for the composition of the Upanishads? Well, if you look at historians and Indologists, right, they have said between 800 and 400 BC. Of course, though many versions have been written, rewritten, translated, transliterated, and then translated again, right? So, but they have been existing even beyond that time frame, or before that time frame. They apply to man in general and not any man of any specific religion. And that is the true beauty, because there is a commonality of thought. There is a commonality of approach. Therefore, it does not refer to any specific religion, but it refers to man. So that is the beauty of our Upanishads, because we are the registered keepers. Hindus have always had Upanishads with them. But, in terms of practice, I don't know how many have, actually looked, read, understood, realized, and practiced it. So the Western philosophers have come, looked at it, taken it back to Western, repackaged it, and they're selling it as different types of things, right? So, like I said, I'm going to be looking at the 13 main ones, which I said, which is the Brihadaranyaka, the Chandogya, the Kena, the Aitreya, the Kaushitaki, Katha, Mundaka, Mandukya, Isha, Ishavasya, Prashna, all this I'll be looking at in the next 13 weeks. And then the last week will be, consolidation, concluding thoughts, and then questions and answers. Like the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad I said to you earlier, it has got a core prayer: lead me from unreal to the real, Asatoma Satgamya, darkness to light, Tamastoma Jyotirgamya, and death to immortality, Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Now, someone asked me once, right, in one of my public talks in Cambridge, some years back, they asked me, if you say, lead me from death to immortality, how is that possible if you have a human birth? I said, that's exactly what it's referring to, so that you are never ever born again as human. That is the immortality that you should be aiming for. And of course, Sai devotees, you repeat this prayer every single time you have a gathering. Every single time your bhajans or your prayers or what, this prayer is always there. So how many times have, people actually reflected on this? As you're saying, lead me from unreal to the real, what are your thoughts? From darkness to light, what are your thoughts? Most of the time when they say Asatoma Satgame Tamastoma Jyotikam Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti, the light comes and says, we've seen the light. Right? So the crux, if you like, the crux of the Upanishads is that this can be achieved by meditating with the awareness that one's soul, Atman, is one with all things, and that one is Brahman, which becomes all. One with all with one, you know. Now, some writers post, the Vyasa stage have said that, beside the Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, the Samhitas, and the Upanishads, there is a fifth classification, which is present in the Vedas. So always there's only four: Brahmanas, Aranyakas, Samhitas, and Upanishads. But some of them, in the later period, says there's something called Anukramanika, right? These are, commentaries or descriptions on the contents of the Vedas in terms of, I would say it's an extension of Sama-veda. So it's actually coming under Sama-veda. So I'm just saying this for information's sake, so that if you come across this word Anukramanika, just know that it is sometimes referred to as a fifth classification apart from Brahmanas, Aranyakas, Samhitas, and Upanishads, right? So there are 1,180 books in total, right? So what are they? Of course, Vyasa classified it into four: Rig-veda, Yajur-veda, Sama-veda, and Atharvana-veda, right? And within the four, there is 1,180 shakas, right? And each shaka is associated with an Upanishad. Each one of these shakas. So if you take the Rig-veda, right, the 21 Upanishads are related to the Rig-veda. 109 Upanishads are related to the Yajur-veda. 1,000 Upanishads are related to Sama-veda, and 50 Upanishads are related to the Atharvana-veda. When you add this, 21 plus 109 is 130, plus 1,000, 1,130, plus 50 for other Veda is 1,180. And of course, most of these shakas, what you find, the actual prose, the actual words, the actual lyrics, the actual content, have been lost with the passage of time, passage of time. So from 1,180, we are now, landed with about 108, 109, 110, depends what you're looking at in terms of your research. And now, from what I've told you earlier, just a minute ago, right? The Rig-veda has only got 10 now. Sama-veda has got 16. Atharvana-veda has got 31. And Krishna Yajur-veda has got 32. Shukla Yajur-veda has got 19. When you add all this, it gets to 108. 10, 16, 31, 32, and 19. Right? But this is the beauty. Now we're coming into the science, right? Because the Vedas are further divided. I told you the chronology, right? Parts, classification, and they also have a subdivision called Upavedas. Upa means a part, right? Or near to, as I said. Upanishad, Upaveda. They are called Atharva-veda or Arthashastra. Arthashastra is the science of sociology and economics. This is contained within Rig-veda. And we are talking about social science and economic science. Arthashastra is already there. And we have this knowledge contained and given to us through Rig-veda. Then we have Dhanur-veda. These are the Upavedas, right? The subdivisions. Dhanur-veda is the science of defense, weaponry, missiles, and warfare. This is in the Yajur-veda. And who is the king of Yajur-veda? Ravana. That's why he was given the title of Ishwaran, Ravaneshwaran, right? Only two deities in the entire Hindu pantheon have got the title of Ishwaran. One is Ravana, the other is Shani. So Ravaneshwaran and Shani-ishwaran, right? And of course, Lord Shiva is Ishwaran himself. So same status. But of course, we talk about, nuclear, atomic bombs and all of that. This was already there in Dhanur-veda. See, Arthashastra gives you science of sociology and economics, Rig-veda. Yajur-veda talks about Dhanur-veda, which is science of defense, weaponry, missiles, and warfare. Then we have Gandharva-veda, which is the science of music, art, culture, and all this, dance, Gandharva-veda, right? That is why one of Saraswati's name is Gandharva Vahini, right? It comes from Gandharva-veda. And this is all connected to instrumental music, art, dance. Sama-veda is the keeper of this information. And then, of course, all of you know this, Ayur-veda. Ayur means life. Ayur-veda means knowledge that gives you life science, knowledge. Science related to life science and medicine. Atharvana-veda gives you this. So Rig-veda looks at the science of sociology and economics. Yajur-veda gives you weaponry, right? Dhanur-veda, same thing. And then Sama-veda gives you Gandharva-veda, which is art, music. And then Atharvana-veda gives you this Ayur-veda. So everything related to Ayurveda you can find in under the auspices of Atharvana-veda. Then there's something else called Shilpa-veda, which is architectural science. And of course, I've referred many times to the celestial architect called Vishwakarma. You look at all this knowledge. Today, we go and read architecture, we go and read economics, we go and read sociology, we go and read, the art of defense, we go and read music, we go and read art, we go and read literature, we go and read life science, we go and read medicine, becoming a doctor, allopathy. All this knowledge was already present yongs and yongs ago, right? So you can see how much they are related to the realities of life in terms of the different pockets of knowledge, right? Then from the Upavedas, you have something called Vedangas, which are the auxiliaries to Vedas, which are essential to learn and understand, like Siksha. Siksha means phonetics and pronunciation. Look at how fantastic, right? You go and learn a language, they'll teach you this, right? But it's already there under Vedangas. Siksha, then you have Vyakarana, which is grammar, right? Today we learn English grammar, right? French grammar, German grammar, but Vyakarana was already there, teaching grammar universally. Chandas, metric composition. Nirukta, which is, Vedic dictionary. And then we have Jyotisha, the art of astronomy, astrology, numerology, gemology, all of this comes in Jyotisha. And then Kalpa, which is an induction to Vedic action. Kalpa. So, Siksha, Vyakarana, Chanda, Nirukta, Jyotisha, and Kalpa, six parts, right? Then you have other books that are emanation from the Vedas, like, Purva Mimamsa by Jaimini Maharishi, right? Jaimini Maharishi. This is for attaining celestial luxuries and not for the realization of God. So, some of the ancient kings, they followed this path. Then we have Nyaya Shastra by Gautama Maharishi, the science of being just, fair, right? Then we have Vaisheshika by Kannada Maharishi, right? Nyaya and Vaisheshika introduce the science of logical thinking and lateral behavior. So, the idea is it removes any realm of, Maya. Any Mayic manifestation would be removed when you look at Nyaya and Vyakarana. Sankhya is a Shastra by Kapila Maharishi, Then, of course, you have the Yoga Shastras by Patanjali Maharishi. And then you have, of course, Uttara Mimamsa by Badrayana Maharishi. So these are different things that give you insight into different aspects of how you can master knowledge in that aspect, and from there, latch on to the Paramatma. Okay, then of course you have Shrutis and you have Smritis. Shruti is everything that you can hear, sound, Nada Brahmam, Shabda Brahmam is Brahma in the form of sound. And Smriti is, that which you can see because your sound is so clear, and the sound will give you the image that it's referring to, right? One that expounds Shastra and one that outlines codes of conduct, Smriti, because you can see. Then, of course, we've got Puranas, right? I'm telling you about the Vedas and all the breakdowns, so you have a clear picture of all the different things and how they relate back to the Vedas, right? Puranas, and of course, got 18 Puranas, and from 15 weeks of Upanishads, maybe in the new year, I might look at the 18 major Puranas. You have so many Puranas, right? So what do they represent? What do they symbolize? What is the scientific significance of that? Then, of course, you also have the Itihasas. The two biggest Itihasas are the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. But there's something called Yoga Vashishta, Itihasa, and Harivamsha Itihasa. So actually there are four, but we focus only on the two big ones, which is Ramayana and Mahabharata. So Puranas is different from the Vedas. Puranas are referred to as Shruti Samhita, right? Shruti Samhita, which basically means friendly treaties or friendly agreements. Whereas the Vedas are called Prabhu Samhitas, which means commanding treaties or authoritative treaties or agreements. So you can see Puranas have only got an influential, effect, whereas the Vedas have got a binding effect. This is where they differ in terms of depth and scope, right? Now, what is the relevance of Vedas to science? We talk about rainbows in the modern time, right? But 6th century CE, in the Brahat Samhita of the Rig-veda, they refer to the formation of rainbow, and this is called Indrayuda Lakshana, where they actually talk about how rainbows are formed. Indrayuda Lakshana, 6th century CE. Later, 11 centuries later, Isaac Newton also spoke about this, where he says, multicolored rays of the sun being dispersed in a cloudy sky in the form of a bow becomes a rainbow because of the rainy clouds behind it, rainbow. But this is exactly what Indrayuda Lakshana said, 6th century CE in the Brahma Samhita, chapter 35, if anybody wants to check and verify, right? Surya Narayana Shloka talks about the 7 colors of Surya Lok and Surya. That is why if you see some pictures of Lord Surya, right, you will see he's riding 7 horses. 7 horses represent the 7 colors and the 7 planes, Bhud, Bhuva, Suvaha, Maha, Janaha, Tapaha, right? 7 levels, which is, the Gayatri Mantra, right? So we've looked at the moon, we've looked at the sun, we've looked at rainbow, right? Gravity, right? Vaisheshika Sutra talks about the role of gravity and how how moving objects fall downward. Vaisheshika Sutra, chapter 5, verse 1, right? Concept of time dilation, Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 9, talks about concept of time dilation. Concept of multiverse. Multiverse means parallel universes, right? This has not been proven by science, but Srimad Bhagavatam refers to it. In fact, we always say there are 3 lokas, Bhuloka, Bhuloka, Swaloka. So that itself is a concept of multiverse, which has not been proven by science, but we have in Srimad Bhagavatam and in fact in Devi Bhagavatam. I don't know if you've listened to my talk on the significance or inner significance of Navaratri, where I have spoken about Devi Bhagavatam, right? Concept of sphericity, sphericity of earth, Srimad Bhagavatam chapter 5 talks about this. Concept of rising and setting of sun, where the West refers to it as AM, anti-meridian, and PM, post-meridian. Let me tell you, it comes from the Rig-veda. It comes from the Aitreya Upanishad. AM is Arohanam Marthandasya. PM is Paschattham Marthandasya. Right? Of course, now we forgot that. Now everything is AM and PM, anti-meridian, post-meridian. But go and look in the Rig-veda, chapter 3, verse 44. You will find this Arohanam Marthandasya. And Yoga Vashishta also discusses this in his work, right? On the universal, the parallelity of universe. He talks about this thing. Arohanam Marthandasya, Paschattham Marthandasya, right? The concept of universe as being in projection in space and in time. Atharvana-veda talks about this. The 19th mandala talks about this. And Adi Shankara has also talked about this when he created this Dakshinamurti Stotram. He refers to this concept of the universe as being projected in time and in space. So it's fantastic. The concept of cyclical nature of time. Rig-veda Mandala 10 talks about the cyclical nature of time and creation. Concept of the speed of light. Rishi Sayanacharya, already when he was commenting on one of the verses of Rig-veda, he says, this is, and you can, when I talk to you about Taittiriya Upanishad, I'll refer to this. Right? He says, oh sun, I bow. This is a Rishi who's looking at the sun and saying, oh sun, I bow to you. You who traverse 2,202 yojanas in half a nimisha. Nimisha is minute. So he's actually giving the yojanas. And I think I explained to you in Ramayana when I was talking about Hanuman, how in Hanuman Chalisa, the distance is measured. Now this is talking about the speed of light. Now, if you convert 2,202 yojanas in half a nimisha into modern calculation, you will find that the modern figures give you the approximate value of the speed of light based on this calculation. That is how accurate our rishis were, because of Shruti and Smriti. Right? Concepts of one being essence of the other, quantum physics. Right? 100%. We talk about the Panchabhutas. We talk about, the Panchayajnas related to quantum physics concept. You see, for the existence, some scientific concepts, right? You will find it is talking about the nature of the observer. To comment on something, it requires an observer, right? Only when the observer observes, he can comment on what has been observed. So for the existence of something, an observer is required. For example, if we say fire exists, right? Then there should be an observer to say that, oh, that is fire. Therefore, I acknowledge the existence of fire. This is quantum physics. And this, our Vedas already talked about, And next week, when I talk to you about Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, when I talk about chapter 2, I'll talk to you about something called Madhu Vidya. Honey, the knowledge that is the honey, right? Literal translation is knowledge of honey. Madhu Vidya actually means knowledge of, of essence. Just like honey is the essence prepared by the bees, the Madhu Vidya gives you the essence of Parama Jnana, where you can go. Now, from there, let me come to modern scientists. This is where you can hail the supremacy of the Vedas. Stephen Hawking, the great Stephen Hawking, right? And I had the good pleasure and the blessings to meet him twice in Cambridge, right? And unconsciously or consciously, I don't know, the first thing I did was I touched his feet, right? It just so happened that we had a chaplaincy meeting in the same building where it's called the Stephen Hawking building. And he just happened to be there. I said, wow, what a great thing, right? Touch the feet of the man who, despite being, he had something called MND, right? Motor neuron disease. And he was, in a wheelchair, and he could see and he could explain the science of astronomy and astrophysics. That is how great your mind is, Even physically you can be disabled, but your mind can never be disabled in that sense, right? So, and this was actually acknowledged, right? Stephen Hawking believed that the theory of the Vedas was superior to the relativity theory of Einstein. And actually an Indian minister at the time, the science and technology minister actually made this reference in a report in the Indian Science Congress back in 2018, which is not very long ago, right? He spoke about how Stephen Hawking always believed that the theory of Vedas was far superior than any of Einstein's theories, right? Erwin Schrödinger. Schrödinger was an Austrian physicist who won the Physics Nobel Prize in 1933. He spoke about the gems behind Bhagavad Gita. Austrian physicist. Then you have the German physicist, Werner Heisenberg. Heisenberg also spoke about the Vedanta and quantum physics, and he related the two. This quantum physics and Vedanta, there is no difference, right? The father of atomic bomb, Robert Oppenheimer, he read Sanskrit in Kashi, was well versed in Vedantic philosophy, and he said, it is the only religion, but he used the wrong word religion, but he was referring to obviously the Vedas, right? And because Vedas relate to Hinduism, but as I said, it doesn't refer to the word Hindu in any place, but refers to man as in a form of creation. Oppenheimer said it is the only religion in which time scales and mathematical calculations correspond with those of the modern scientific cosmology. I mean, how fantastic is that? Niels Bohr, the Danish quantum physicist, he said, whenever I have a doubt, I go into the Upanishads and I get my answer. Quantum physicists, these are scientists. I mean, scientists never believe anything spiritual, right? Let me tell you that. And I've had many debates with many scientists, but these are big guys in the field of science. Niels Bohr. Numerous others. Carl Sagan, he was the American astronomer. He was a cosmologist. He was an astrophysicist. He says, I was called to give, evidence in front of the Senate on 3 occasions. And on all 3 occasions, I swore on the Vedas because there is no higher truth. I was a born Christian, born practicing Christian, right? Carl Sagan. Most of you will know Tesla, Nikola Tesla, right? One of the greatest modern scientists. I mean, you can see some of his works, right, in the form of automobiles now. He's an ardent disciple of Vedanta and is a great, great friend of Vivekananda. Right? So there are lots of things that they have spoken about, right? Albert Einstein. When I read the Bhagavad Gita and reflect on how God created this universe, everything else seems so superfluous. Wow. Isaac Newton, he drew inspiration from Vedic literature for all his works. Alan Watts, professor, graduate school dean, heavily relied on the philosophy of the Vedanta. Right? Voltaire, the great Voltaire. The Veda was the most precious gift which has been given to the West, and forever they should be indebted to the East. That is Voltaire. Arthur Schopenhauer, the great, German scientist. He studied Upanishads. He swears by it. Max Muller, another great name in German science, educated in Sanskrit, and he believed that the earliest documents of Vedic culture should be studied so that they can see how well advanced they were and how backdated we are here currently. That is why, because of all this, you will find that the German language itself, 40% of German language has got a Sanskrit root. And so they say it's one of the most difficult languages to learn. So to sum up, right, I can say the Atharvana-veda has 4 Upanishads, right? The Kaivalya Upanishad, the Prashna Upanishad, the Mundaka Upanishad, and the Mandukya Upanishad. The Yajur-veda, the Krishna Yajur-veda has got 3, right? Katho, Taitriya, and Shvetasvatara. And then Shukla Yajur-veda has got 2, which is Ishvavasya and Brihadaranyaka, which I'm going to look at next week. Sama-veda has got 2 Upanishads, right? Chandogya Upanishad, Kena Upanishad. And Rig-veda has got 1 Upanishad, Taitriya Upanishad. And this you add up, it becomes 12, but I've put 1 more, 13 I will look at. So next week, we will look at Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and your journey into the crest level of knowledge, the crest jewel of knowledge begins it started today to give you a background of the Vedas and where the Upanishads come. And I told you the connection between science, modern science, and Vedic philosophy. And all the modern scientists of how they have relied on the richness and the heritage of all our Vedic documents to become what they are. So if you and I can rely, then we can also become great and contribute in some way, right? So I'll stop here for today. I think I've already gone on for 1 hour, 20 minutes. I didn't know, just looking at the time now. Anyada sharanam nasti tvameva sharanam mama tasmat karunyabhavena raksha Sai Ishvara Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Sai Ishvara Arpanamastu.